The year was 1946, and in a small corner of the Smoky Mountains, a newborn baby girl took her first breath. She was just one of 12 children in a family so poor that, according to family lore, her parents couldn't even pay the doctor in cash. Instead, her father handed over a humble sack of cornmeal as payment for bringing his daughter into the world. That little girl was named Dolly Rebecca Parton, a name that decades later would glitter across billboards, light up theaters, echo in concert halls, and shine on movie screens around the world. Fast forward through the years, and Dolly Parton became far more than just another country music star. She became an American institution, a living legend whose influence stretched across music, business, and philanthropy. She has sold more than 100 million records across the globe, collected 11 Grammy Awards out of nearly 50 nominations, and transformed Dollywood into one of the most beloved theme parks in the United States. Beyond the glamour, she also launched the Imagination Library, a literacy program that has mailed out more than 200 million free books to children worldwide. Yet, for all the sparkle of wigs, rhinestones, and quick one-liners, Dolly has also carried a secret side of herself. For over 30 years, she carefully built a dazzling public image that millions thought they knew while privately guarding another. Quieter life that rarely reached the spotlight. This double identity. Dolly the icon versus Dolly the woman is what makes her story magnetic. It's not about scandal or deceit, but about survival. From a very young age, Dolly realized that sometimes you have to play a role in public in order to protect what matters most in private. While she sang proudly about her coat of many colors, her real life was woven together with far more layers than most people ever imagined. To truly understand Dolly's double life, we need to look back to where it all began. Dolly Parton entered the world on January 19, 1946. In Locust Ridge, Tennessee, a small mountain hamlet near Pittman Center in the Great Smoky Mountains. She was the fourth of 12 children, born to Robert Lee Parton, a sharecropper and construction worker, and Avie Lee Parton, a mother who held the family together with her faith, her love, and her music. The story of Dolly's birth has become legendary. Her father, short on money, paid the doctor with a sack of cornmeal. Dolly often retells the story with humor, never once hiding from her humble beginnings. Poverty, however, did more than shape Dolly's childhood. It fueled her creativity. Out of hardship came some of her most timeless songs, like Coat of Many Colors. Inspired by the patchwork jacket her mother lovingly stitched together from scraps of fabric, life in the tiny one-room cabin was far from easy. It was crowded, noisy, and sometimes chaotic, but it was also full of music. Avie Lee taught her children old Appalachian folk songs, while the church filled Dolly's heart with gospel hymns that would stay with her forever. By the time Dolly was just 10 years old, she was already singing on Knoxville radio stations, and at 13 she made her first appearance on the Grand Ole Opry, where none other than Johnny Cash introduced her. Even as a child, Dolly was certain of her destiny. She once said, "I always knew I was meant for more than a cabin in the woods. I just didn't know how far I'd have to go to get there." That determination carried her forward. The very day after graduating high school in 1964, Dolly packed up and moved to Nashville, chasing her dream without hesitation. The road was not smooth. Nashville was crowded with hopefuls. Dolly's high, mountain-flavored voice didn't fit the mainstream pop country mold of the time. But Dolly had something stronger than luck: persistence. She signed with Monument Records, initially nudged toward a pop sound, but soon found her footing in country. Her big break came in 1967, when television star Porter Wagoner invited her to join him on The Porter Wagoner Show. That partnership catapulted her to fame. Together they recorded hit duets, toured the nation, and built a loyal fan base. Yet behind the glittering smiles and matching outfits, Dolly was already showing the world her independence. She wasn't content to be just a sidekick in 1974. Dolly made the brave and painful decision to leave Wagoner's show and pursue a solo career. To soften the goodbye, she wrote, "I will always love you." A heartfelt farewell that would later become one of the most famous songs in music history. That moment perfectly reflects her double life, sweet and gentle on the surface, but powered by fierce ambition and a deep need to define herself on her own terms. But stardom required more than talent. It required Imogen. That's where Dolly's other life began to shine. Dolly once joked, "It costs a lot of money to look this cheap." And that one-liner, delivered with a wink, sums up her genius. In the 1970s, when country music women were expected to look sweet and subdued, Dolly flipped the script. She piled her hair into sky-high wigs, wore sparkling rhinestone gowns, and painted her lips a dazzling red. Her inspiration? A bold, flamboyant woman back home who was gossiped about in whispers, yet never forgotten. Dolly decided, if that's trashy, then trashy sure looks fun. Her look, however, was more than style, it was armor. By creating a dazzling, larger-than-life version of herself, Dolly distracted the world from digging into her private struggles. She even admitted to sleeping in her makeup so that if disaster struck in the middle of the night, she'd be ready to face the public without breaking her image. It might sound exhausting, but for Dolly, it was survival in an industry eager to discard women who looked too ordinary. She even turned rumors into punchlines. When tabloids speculated about plastic surgery, Dolly beat them to it by saying, "If something's bagging, sagging, or dragging, I'll tuck it, suck it, or pluck it." In doing so, she stayed in control of the narrative, transforming vulnerability into humor. The most fascinating part of Dolly's public persona is the way she blended transparency with secrecy. She could chatter endlessly about her wigs, makeup, and flashy outfits. But when it came to the intimate details of her life, her marriage, her private struggles, her faith, she kept things locked away. This wasn't deception. It was strategy. Dolly the spectacle protected Dolly the soul. But contradictions only multiplied as her career grew. She was the glamorous queen of country, yet she shocked fans by posing for Playboy. She was a gospel singer devoted to her Christian roots, but she also pursued crossover pop success. She gave away millions through charity, but also built herself into a sharp business brand decades before celebrity branding became common. And at the heart of all these contradictions lay one of her greatest mysteries: her marriage. On May 30th, 1966, Dolly quietly married Carl Thomas Dean. The ceremony was tiny, just Dolly, Carl her mother, the preacher, and the preacher's wife. Carl has remained her partner for nearly 60 years, yet for the world he is practically invisible. He avoids interviews, avoids red carpets, and shuns public attention so thoroughly that fans often wondered if he even existed. Dolly leaned into the rumors with humor, once joking that people thought she kept a mannequin in the closet and named it Carl. The truth was far simpler. While Dolly toured the world, built Dollywood, and starred in movies like 9 to 5, Carl ran his asphalt paving company and lived quietly in Nashville. The contrast couldn't be starker. Dolly dazzling in sequins, Carl in work boots at home. It became one of the clearest examples of her double life. Faith was another defining piece of her identity. Growing up in the Smokies, gospel music and prayer were stitched into her very soul. And Dolly has always spoken openly about her Christianity. She even released gospel albums and has said that she prays daily. But in 1978, she stunned conservative fans by appearing on the cover of Playboy. She didn't pose Nucci, wore the famous bunny suit with ears, and all but for many. The image of a gospel-singing country girl in Playboy was nearly scandalous. Dolly often brushed things off with her trademark humor, later laughing that she once posed in a bunny outfit simply because, in her words, she looked kinda cute back then and wanted to show it off while she could. That image, Bible in one hand and bunny ears in the other, captures the essence of Dolly Parton. She is never neatly fit into a single box, and maybe that's the real secret behind her magic. Her so-called double life was never about hiding sins. It was about refusing to be trapped by expectations. You can hear this contradiction in her music as well. On a single night in 1973, she wrote two of her biggest songs, Jolene and I Will Always Love You. One explored jealousy and temptation, while the other was a tender farewell. To channel such drastically different emotions in the same sitting shows just how many emotional worlds Dolly was navigating all at once. But Dolly's story isn't only about her music. Take her business empire, for example. Fans might see Dollywood as just a charming theme park filled with roller coasters, country flair, and famous cinnamon bread. Yet behind that curtain is an incredibly sharp businesswoman. Dolly owns multiple companies under the Dollywood umbrella, has poured investments into media ventures, and has built her global brand with near-surgical precision. Still, she often downplays this side of herself, preferring to lean into the image of a simple country girl Evan as she makes multi-million-dollar business decisions. This, too, is a kind of double life, the savvy CEO quietly at work beneath the glittery gowns and southern charm. Then there's her philanthropy, which has become just as legendary as her songs. In 1995, Dolly launched the Imagination Library, a program that has since mailed more than 200 million free books to children all around the world. She's also helped fund hospitals, given out scholarships, and in 2020 donated $1 million to Vanderbilt University's COVID-19 vaccine research, a contribution that played a key role in the development of the Moderna vaccine. And yet, in classic Dolly fashion, she's quick to laugh it off, insisting she doesn't do it for recognition. She once said, "I just think it's important to give back if you've been blessed. And I've been more blessed than I ever deserved." Even here, there's duality. The public sees generosity, while Dolly quietly frames it as a personal mission shaped by her childhood, poverty, and her faith. By the 1980s and 90s, Dolly was living in two parallel worlds, one dazzlingly public and one fiercely private. Both functioned in harmony, but keeping that balance wasn't easy. It raises the question, why did she cling so tightly to this separation? Living two lives might sound glamorous, but in truth, it was like juggling fire. Dolly managed it for decades, and the reasons ran deeper than wigs and witty one-liners. First came the relentless pressure of fame. Imagine waking up every day knowing millions feel entitled to your story, your secrets, your heartbreaks. Dolly understood early that fame can devour you unless you set boundaries. So she created a glittering persona for the world to feast on, while keeping the most tender parts of her heart locked away. It wasn't deception, it was survival. Another layer of her strategy had to do with gender. Dolly entered country music in the 1960s, a time when women were often expected to stay sweet, submissive, and secondary. Instead, she exaggerated her femininity, the wigs, the makeup, the jokes about her figure turning them into shields. By making fun of herself first, she stripped away the power of her critics. If they called her too flashy, she laughed even louder. If they mocked her bust, she turned it into a punchline. That was power, and it gave her room to climb ladders that might have otherwise been pulled away. Control was the third key. Dolly wasn't just a performer, she was a songwriter and a savvy businesswoman. She held on to her publishing rights, a move that paid off massively when Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You became one of the best-selling singles of all time. She understood the importance of playing the long game. While the public Dolly distracted the world with sequins and sass, the private Dolly was quietly signing contracts, building empires, and playing chess while everyone else thought she was playing checkers. Of course, the double life came with risks. Keeping secrets meant fueling endless speculation. For years, tabloids ran wild with rumors about her marriage, her sexuality, and supposed affairs. Dolly brushed it off with humor, famously saying, "People are always talking. If they're talking about me, at least they're leaving someone else alone." But behind the jokes, the constant need to deflect and carefully edit her answers surely took a toll. In interviews from the 1980s, you can see moments where Dolly hesitated before answering questions about her husband Carl Dean, or the loneliness of life on the road. In her 1994 autobiography, Dolly, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, she admitted to bouts of depression and self-doubt. She even confessed that during the 1980s, she reached such a low point that she contemplated suicide, a haunting reminder that beneath the wigs and laughter was a human being fighting to cope. So why continue with the exhausting double life? Because the alternative, handing everything over to fame, was worse? Dolly once said, "I'm not going to limit myself just because people won't accept the fact that I can do something else." By keeping her public and private selves separate, she carved out the freedom to experiment, to survive, and to thrive. When fans saw her on stage in rhinestone gowns cracking jokes, they were entertained. But when she went home, took off the wig, and sat on the porch with Carl, she was safe. Both versions of Dolly mattered. But they didn't need to overlap. Maintaining that balance for 3 decades was like walking a tightrope. And yes, sometimes the rope shook. Every so often, the private Dolly peeked out from behind the curtain, reminding the world she was more than sequins and sass. By shielding Carl from the spotlight, she ensured she had at least one part of her life untouched by fame. This duality, the superstar, and Dolly, the private wife who cooked dinner at home, was the key to her survival in an industry that often swallows its brightest stars. Most fans had no idea about the depression she battled in the 1980s. She masked her pain with humor and energy. But behind the glitter, she was quietly facing health struggles, heartbreak, and emotional turmoil. Years later, she finally spoke about it openly, proving once again that the Dolly the public adored was only half the story. Her glittering mask wasn't deception, it was strategy. It was her way of giving the world what it wanted while keeping what she truly needed for herself. On one side, she embodied Southern warmth, kind, generous, family-oriented. On the other, she was daring, bold, and unafraid to shock the world. Who else could donate millions to children's education and medical research while also posing for Playboy and then reprised that iconic bunny outfit at age 75 for her husband's birthday? Dolly did, joking, "I did it because I still had the boobs and the waistline." Classic Dolly. Her contradictions extend even further into her music career. Though she built her empire on country, she was never afraid to cross genres. In the late 1970s and 80s, she blended pop into her sound with hits like "Here You Come Again" and 9 to 5. And in 2023, at age 77, she shocked the world again by going full rock star, releasing Rockstar, an album packed with duets, alongside legends like Paul McCartney, Elton John, and Stevie Nicks. Fans were stunned. Critics were impressed, and Dolly admitted she only did it because after being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, she felt she had to earn it. That's Dolly's style. When challenged, she doesn't just show up, she shows up bigger, bolder, and sparklier than anyone else. At the heart of all these contradictions lies one constant: Dolly does exactly what Dolly wants. She refuses to be bound by categories or expectations. She can be wholesome and sexy, humble and flamboyant, private and larger-than-life all at the same time. That's the paradox that makes her timeless. Her story reads like an American fairy tale. Born in a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains, paid for with a sack of cornmeal. She grew up without electricity, plumbing, or even shoes. Yet she turned those humble beginnings into the foundation for one of the most remarkable careers in music history. Her so-called double life was never about scandal, it was about survival. Dolly created a dazzling persona that allowed her to shine while protecting her truest self. For decades, she managed to live both lives seamlessly, never truly fooling anyone, but never letting anyone pin her down either. And maybe that's the real lesson. Dolly Parton shows us that you don't have to be just one thing. You can be glitter and grit, faith and freedom, fantasy and reality. You can be Dolly Parton the icon and Dolly Parton the woman, and let both thrive without compromise. So when people say Dolly lived a double life for 30 years, the truth is simpler. Dolly lived life on her own terms. And in doing so, she didn't just become a superstar, she became folklore. A living legend whose story will be told long after the last rhinestone fades.